Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Jacob Soboroff for NPR Sunday Soapbox. This month on Weekend Edition Sunday, we're doing a series about race and politics, and actually some of you may have already participated by logging on to getmyvote at npr.org and sharing your stories about how race has affected your view of politics today. We're here in Los Angeles to ask folks that same question.
As far as race and politics are concerned, I think America is really moving into a progressive state. Because if you go back about 60 years ago when I was a young man, there were many places in the South where we were not allowed to vote. So now that they're not only allowed to vote, but they have blacks, Hispanics that's running for public office. Now, like I was raised in California, but I was born in Louisiana. Okay, and they're almost a world apart. Because if you went to vote in Louisiana, that was at the risk of your life.
I'm retired. I hang out with a bunch of guys at the beach, we surf in the morning. And if we start talking politics, it usually ends up in a little bit of animosity between some guy and another guy. So we sort of like just keep it to ourselves. Maybe we kind of go over it very lightly, and we'll be more sarcastic about it than anything else. There's maybe one or two guys that are old school, maybe, and they're a little upset that they see different races possibly gaining control of government offices and whatnot.
I'm a transportation planner. I'm a public transit planner. And who are my clients? It's people who are riding the bus, people who are riding the trains. The vast majority of the folks in LA who are doing that now aren't Caucasian. Those are my clients. I relate to those folks. So maybe that influences the way I vote a little bit.
When I was younger, there was a little prejudice that I had experienced. I grew up in all white schools. I was probably the only Mexican American in the schools at that time, even though it didn't affect me that much. I had a great career as a police officer, 34 years. I live in a real nice home. I drive a nice car. I have money in the bank. So, I have a good retirement. My dad was in the segregated army. When he went in the army in '46, there was a black army and a white army. So he's from that era.
Your keys.
Yeah, and oh, sorry, it's open. I opened it. Here, Taylor. But so that my parents were from that era of segregation. So when I married my black wife, they kind of had problems with that. But like I said, they won't admit that to this day. But so I've seen that coming from an interracial marriage, my daughter. But I haven't really had any problems, and I just think. I think the blacks and Hispanics over the years didn't get their fair share.
How has race affected your view of politics personally?
In no way. It's all based on merit and experience.
And is that how you, growing up and in your past, was that your life's experience?
Absolutely.
I'm an urban planner, and a lot of it's being impacted by race. You have a really big urban underclass here in Los Angeles. I don't get their fair share of planning services or city services. So it's how do we look at the political system to really kind of compensate for that need?
For me personally, it's difficult. I come from not the most challenged background. I mean, I'm pretty fortunate. Both my parents raised me really well. Here we have all of these potential differences that people look at and can identify and could necessarily judge on, and still. The person with those differences that have held a person in that position back in the past are now inconsequential. And I think that's progress.